Before we start, remember, if we are using the APA format to use the Times New Roman, font size 12, double space between all text, 1-inch margin, align text to the left, indent the first line of every paragraph with the exception of the abstract, block quotations, titles and headings, table titles and notes, and figure captions. The methodology is a system of methods used in a particular area of study or activity. It covers research design, data gathering procedure, the sample, the research instrument, the data analysis, and statistical treatment of data. Chronologically, we write Chapter 3 from top, starting with the research design, and down to the last, which is the statistical treatment of data. When you start the page for Chapter 3, we can always start with a generic introduction like this, where we mention the parts of Chapter 3. Afterwards, we start by writing the research design. The research design is the portion of the methodology in which we describe in detail the type of research design, whether if it's a descriptive case study, correlational, or through experimental research design. We are going to focus on experimental research design in this video since most of this design includes diagrams in representing their own characteristics. Now with the single group pretest and posttest design diagram, having two zeros or two O's in which one represents the pretest and the other represents the posttest. Typically, the research design looks similar to a physics equation, and just like an equation, we include the descriptions for each symbol. The sample covers the details of your participants. Here we describe the participants if you group them according to their age or according to their race. You also include the number of participants used in this portion. Next, we have the research instruments. If your research design is an experiment, you will have to use tools, right? So enumerate in detail the specifications of your equipment. But if you utilize a test to measure data, you must be detailed in information on where you copy the test, and never forget to ask consent from the author/creator and mention it in your paper. Or if the test is self-made, you must have a detailed information on how it was developed and validated. This means that you must mention in your paper the names of the validators and how many drafts you created. Also, you include how many revisions were made following the advice of your validators. Don't forget to include the specification of your tests, such as number of items, different parts or categories. The data gathering procedure is where we describe in detail every step in conducting your study. Now, if you ask permission from the proper authorities in conducting your study, you must always mention it here. In example, if you use a class for a demonstration, you must first ask permission from their principal. Next, we have data analysis. In this part, we describe in detail on how an individual could interpret the results of your test. If you were given a test, for example, and your score was rated A, how do you know if you passed or failed? In this portion of your research, we include the full descriptions for the scores, just like the rating, then the corresponding score for that rating, and finally the description for that particular rating or score. Remember, each test has its own interpretation and it will vary depending on the author. Lastly, we have the statistical treatment of data. We describe in full detail the statistical tool we use to arrive at a conclusion. Whether it's a t-test, chi-square, or ANOVA, and don't forget to describe it in detail. You may mention here if you use Excel or SPSS in computing your data, but it's more acceptable to compute your data using the SPSS application.